The Fiend versus Randy Orton was easily the most controversial match from WrestleMania 37. Even before the match started, people were confused that The Fiend reverted back to his old self during the beginning of his entrance. And then the match itself happened, and The Fiend versus Randy Orton disappointed a ton of wrestling fans. The match lasted 5 minutes and ended with Alexa Bliss distracting Bray Wyatt with all this black blood or gore, whatever you want to call it, pouring down her face. The fans were chanting holy shit, but Randy Orton took advantage of this moment and hit an RKO out of nowhere to win the match. People were pissed about the outcome of this match for a number of reasons. The first issue is that they were hella confused with everything going on. The second problem was that they claimed that this buried Bray Wyatt and he should have won the match. For some reason, people still think that wins and losses matter in WWE. I don't think it does too much. WWE can rebuild people whenever they want. It's not a big deal. It is written, guys. And when it comes to a character like The Fiend, it matters even less. Bray Wyatt's matches are always about progressing a storyline or doing something that his character wants to do. It's never about championships, wins, or losses. It's all about achieving his sick and twisted motive. So many people do not understand this. This loss means absolutely nothing to Bray Wyatt because, quite frankly, he's got a bigger dilemma on his hands. In this video, I will explain my theory about the storyline, which is that it seems like we have a new Fiend in the WWE, and that is Alexa Bliss. Let me explain everything. If we want to truly understand this theory, we have to take a step back to 2015 when Bray Wyatt first introduced the Fiend gimmick. Most of you are probably confused right now because we never saw the Fiend until 2019. That is correct. The Fiend did not appear on screen until the feud between Bray Wyatt and Finn Balor for SummerSlam of 2019. However, Bray Wyatt mentioned him in a WWE YouTube video where he was explaining the story of a ghost that he saw in the woods. In that video, Bray Wyatt talks about a monster in the woods. It was an old tale and he decided to investigate it. When he approached it, he saw the monster that perfectly describes the Fiend that we see nowadays in 2021. Bray Wyatt then explained that the monster had his slingshot in his hand and he showed it to Bray Wyatt and it scared the hell out of him. This obviously frightened Bray so much that he ran to Sister Abigail to tell her, and then she revealed to him that they share the same slingshot because Bray Wyatt is the monster. That means that the Fiend is a monster or evil-like energy that's been locked up in Bray Wyatt since the early days of his career. And it took years of negligence for the WWE and also other years of humiliation from the WWE roster for the monster to take over and unlock itself. And that is when we saw the Fiend. Once the monster was unleashed, there was no stopping him. The Fiend was destroying everyone in his path, especially those that hurt him from the past. Finn Balor was the first victim of this. Then came Seth Rollins, and then Daniel Bryan, and then John Cena, and then Braun Strowman. The Fiend was slowly getting revenge and retribution for all the years of physical and mental pain, all of the trauma that was buried deep down in him. And then Alexa Bliss came into the picture. This is when things get a little confusing, but it still makes sense if you closely paid attention to the story. I believe that Alexa Bliss has to resemble Sister Abigail in some way. I'm not sure if it's her appearance or her energy, but it needs to be one of the two. This reminds the Fiend and Bray Wyatt both of Sister Abigail, and that's why they are so invested in Alexa Bliss. This is even more evident in the swamp fight between Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman. Alexa Bliss made an appearance in that cinematic match before she was even involved in the storyline. That means that the Fiend had his eyes on Alexa Bliss, or what he thinks is Sister Abigail, months before they even got together. The Fiend recreated a vision of Alexa Bliss in the match through his powers to also remind Braun Strowman of Sister Abigail. That confirms that the Fiend Bray, and Braun all see her when they look at Alexa Bliss. The audience is well aware of the fact that Sister Abigail died and her sacred ground was burnt by Randy Orton, but The Fiend and Bray Wyatt do not want to believe the reality of the situation. It's easier to get someone that looks like Sister Abigail and rewire their brain than to acknowledge that they died, and that is exactly what happened. The Fiend slowly corrupted the mind of Alexa Bliss on SmackDown last year. As you can see from the very first encounter, she was scared for her life and clearly did not want to work with him. But his powers were too strong, and it's also possible that Alexa Bliss liked the newfound power and energy from The Fiend and Bray Wyatt. And now I believe that The Fiend's energy transferred over from Bray Wyatt to Alexa Bliss after TLC. When Randy Orton burnt alive Bray Wyatt, his body technically died, and Alexa Bliss received The Fiend's energy. The power needed a body that was alive. It needed a body that it was familiar with. Alexa Bliss was the perfect candidate. Bray Wyatt already showed her around the Firefly Funhouse. Bray Wyatt and The Fiend even see a resemblance of Sister Abigail, and that's why he chose to transfer over from Bray Wyatt's dead body to Alexa Bliss. This makes even more sense when you realize that Alexa Bliss didn't really use any magical powers until after TLC. As soon as Bray Wyatt died, Alexa Bliss started to act completely different. She started using fireballs, controlling equipment in the arena, and even made Randy Orton cough up black blood from his mouth. I don't think it's a coincidence that Alexa Bliss started to use similar powers to The Fiend once Bray Wyatt was burnt to a crisp. With my theory, this brings a sense of clarity to the finish of the WrestleMania 37 match between Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. If you look back, you will see that once Alexa Bliss popped up with the black blood coming down her face, Bray Wyatt looked completely shocked. He also reaches out his hand as if he knows he just lost something and he wants it back. And that's true, he did lose something. He lost The Fiend. People assume that when he saw Alexa Bliss, he was being controlled by her. No, I don't think that's it. Nothing can control The Fiend. Instead, I believe that he saw The Fiend in Alexa Bliss. In that moment, he came to realize that he was no longer in possession of this energy. It's also the reason why he could not kick out of the RKO. He just lost his power. To top it off, he just lost everything, including The Fiend, and so he was not worried about winning the match or kicking out in that very moment. Alexa Bliss and The Fiend just brought back Bray Wyatt from the dead just to humiliate him. The Fiend wanted to show Bray Wyatt that he was nothing more than a sad and pathetic man who held him back. Alexa Bliss is going to unleash the true potential of this monster. It's going to cause havoc that we have never seen before in the WWE. And last night's episode of Raw only makes my theory stronger. Alexa Bliss admitted that she unlocked something truly evil, which is The Fiend's energy. It does seem like she's calling it Lily though. And on the flip side, Bray Wyatt frantically talked about how he feels reborn while looking like he is trying to hide something. We may have seen the end of the Fiend Bray Wyatt, and it might be the beginning for the new Fiend, Alexa Bliss. And that is my theory, guys. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. And on the screen right now are some other videos that you should totally check out if you got some free time. I will see you all in the next video.